Hello everyone, and welcome back to another manga volume review. I am the Rat, and this is The Rat's Nest. Today we're talking about Berserk. We're back at Berserk. I love Berserk. It's a phenomenal series, and this volume was no different. I am an absolute fan. Berserk Volume 14. This was a very, very good volume. You kind of had a lot of everything in this volume. If by everything you mean Berserk. You kind of had a lot of Berserk this volume. This was a very good volume. Volume 13 was a phenomenal volume. But at least like dialogue-wise, there was a lot of action with it, right? And there wasn't as much to kind of sink your teeth into a little bit. But here, now, there was a little bit more to sink your teeth into. That's not to say, I mean, I loved Volume 13. Obviously, extremely important to the story, you know, the second half of the eclipse. And, you know, everyone dying, and then Nuts' rage and his war starting, and the betrayal of Griffith, and all that kind of thing. Absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. And Volume 14 was a very, very good follow-up. So, we pick up kind of where we left off in Volume 13, which is whenever Nuts is a little bit worried about Casca, and he's like, oh, the little ghost things are going to go get her, and so Skeleton Knight gives him a ride. And we get a little thing where Skeleton Knight at the beginning is like, he's like, I'm an enemy to all the non-humans, all the Inhumans, that's all you need to know about me. And then he's like, I'm the one that got you guys out of there. Cool, still mysterious skeleton guy, right? He's a cool little critter. And he gets there. Him and Nuts get there, and Casca's, she's not getting attacked, and they're like, well, that's kind of odd. And Nuts goes up to her, and he's like, what's going on? And then she gives birth, and I'm just like, okay, sure, I guess. I mean, great scene, right? I'm not gonna be like, oh, it's a terrible scene. It's awful. Oh, I hate it. No, I really enjoyed it. It's a little jarring, but yeah, it's Berserk, right? Well, I mean, what do you expect, right? So she gives birth, and that's not even the weirdest thing. So it's a little demon, and so then Nuts goes to break it, to stomp it, and Casca kind of blocks, and he's like, what's going on? And the skeleton's like, oh yeah, you should probably kill that thing. He's like, she was with child, but I got corrupted at some point by demonic essence, probably whenever she was handled roughly by the G-Man himself. And he's like it's a demon, like that's a demon child, right? That's a little evil baby, and you need to kill it. You should probably get rid of that. And Nuts is like, wait, she was with child? And he's like, wait a second. And that's when you're like, oh, because this is the child of Nuts and Casca. Now, I kind of lied last volume review whenever I said there's two things that I know about Berserk. Or maybe it was volume 12 that I said that. I kind of lied a tiny teensy little bit. I also knew roughly that Nuts had a child. And I don't know any more details, but I saw that. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's Nuts' kid, right? And that is very cool. I am always a huge fan of whenever a series has a protagonist who has a child at some point over the series. I'm a huge fan of that, and this is an extremely interesting twist on that, right? And especially, it turns morning and then it disappears, right? So it is kind of the same as the other ghost, but it's a demon, but it's still their kid. It's very interesting. We don't see any more of it this volume. I think it's going to stick around Casca, right? That kind of thing. And it looked like it was kind of quote unquote feeding on her sacrifice mark, on her brand. It's going to be very interesting to see everything with this going forward. Obviously, Nuts couldn't bring himself to kill it this time. Is he going to kill it in the future? Is he going to have to kill it in the future? Is it going to retain some humanity? Is Griffith going to take it on kind of like a child, because it is kind of his child as well in a way? All that kind of thing. It's very interesting. The way that they've set this up, and then with Funny Skeleton Man's explanation. We also learned that the cave that they were in is a safe place where the spirits can't reach them. at night. So that's where Casca's going to have to stay, because she's not capable of fighting them off. She's mentally broken. She's mentally destroyed. She has like the mind of a child, right? And this is all just extremely interesting. Like I love it whenever protagonists have children, and this is just an extra layer on top of that. I do wonder how much we're going to get to actually like see of this child with how nuts just is himself. But I'm definitely looking forward to how it goes. And then we see with Rickard and Erica, I think her name is, and then her grandfather, which is like the weapons guy, that Nuts suits up a little bit, right? He suits up. Well, first we get the Erica showing Rickard around like the weapons store, and the old man comes in, and we see the sword. And you see the sword, and you're like, okay, that's the sword, right? That's the funny Nuts sword that he uses to go berserk over everyone, right? To go berserk on everyone. It's like, okay, we're going here. He's like, it was made to slay a dragon, right? And Rickard's like, well, can it slay a dragon? He's like, if there were dragons. He said, but there aren't. He said, and what makes a dragon is that they can't be beat by humans, right? And that kind of thing. It's very interesting. And the Nuts gets his whole outfit, right? He formally becomes the Black Knight, right? The Black Swordsman. Apologies. Didn't mean to diminish Kirito any there. But Nuts does have the same title as him. That's how I remember it. That's genuinely how I remember the Black Swordsman is. I'm like, oh yeah, it's the same thing that Kirito is called. What was it? The something witty entertainment SAO bridge, which is just it's honestly it's better than SAO itself. But I remember it. It's just it's good. And I didn't know that. We get the reason why. Erica's like, so that's a lot of black. Why are you wearing all black? And he's like, because I'm going to be fighting a lot in the night. And it's like, okay, Nuts is kind of serious about this, right? And he gets kind of decked out. Rickard gives him a new hand that he's like, I made this from parts. So it's like, okay, there's Nuts has his prosthetic hand, right? And then the old guy comes up. He's like, I forged this sword for you. He's like, it should serve you well. And I was like, I don't recognize this sword. It's not going anywhere. So I was like, this thing's staying in this arc. And so he's like, all right, I'm Nuts. I'm ready to head out. But then a little demon shows up. A little demon guy shows up. And you're like, okay, what's he cooking? What's he cooking here? He turns into a demon and a little fight ensues. And this is also where Nuts is like, oh, my first one, right? First target for my rage. And then we get that double. It's the Berserk panel. We get the Berserk panel. The panel of Berserk going nuts, right? Dude, whenever Berserk goes nuts, that's crazy. Whenever Nuts goes Berserk, that's crazy. We get the panel of Berserk going nuts. And that's like, okay, that's really, because that's one of the most iconic panels in manga itself. And so whenever I hit that, I was like, okay, we're here. It was really cool because that's the panel, and to know the context around it, right, and to understand all that, and it's like okay, we're cooking. It was really cool. I really enjoyed it. This entire fight itself was fun. Obviously using the sword, and that's just like, okay, I can cut it with the sword. I could probably kill it with this sword. The old man being like, hey, that is something entirely different. I'm certain that it wouldn't, nick or break against humans. He's like, but I didn't design it to fight against Inhumans. And then, yeah, sure enough, the sword breaks. And Nuts himself gets a little bit launched, and Rickard's like, Nuts, do this. He does, and with his hand falls back. It's a cannon, and he shoots the demon. And this is like, dude. Like, look, I love everything pre this point, but Nuts right now is pretty badass. Right, Nuts right now, like Black Swordsman Nuts. He kind of goes hard. I live for that. I live for that kind of stuff. Dude, he can shoot a cannon out of his arm. How cool! It's cool. It's just cool. It's really cool. I digress. He shoots the cannon out of his arm. It's launched again, right? And then he's like, okay, I need something. And he's like, wait a second. I spy with my little eye a hunk of iron. And he pulls out the sword that was made to slay dragons. And he demolishes the demon, right? absolutely demolishes it. And he's like, hey, old man, you didn't tell me you had something that was exactly my style. And Omi was like, he can wield that thing. He's like, he can use that thing. And Nuts is like, yeah, this is it. And we also get Erica being scared of him. She kind of hides behind Rickard, and she's like, Guts is kind of scary right now. Bro's on a warpath. Bro is not kind. Well, bro is not nice. When he's in bloodlust mode, he's going to kill. He is a man of rage, as he himself says. My rage is what keeps me going. It's what keeps me going on my 2 feet, right? And we also get to see a little bit of his mindset of it too, where Rickard goes, the Band of the Hawk is dead. Like, why can't you just stay here? That kind of thing. And Nuts is like, no. He's like, it's not dead. He's like, we're still here. Casca's the leader. You got to take care of her. He's like, I'm in charge of the raiders. I'm going to go raid the enemy camp. And that's cool. That's really cool, because I think this is kind of Nuts accepting that the Band of the Hawk really was his home, right? Where even now, as it's been diminished to 3 members, right? He still wants it to be the Band of the Hawk, right? He still mentally wants that there, because it's like that was where he belonged, kind of. I think that's kind of what Nuts is cooking here. I think that's kind of what Miura was cooking here. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. Like I said at the beginning of last book, or last volume, or volume 12 review. I'm not going to claim to be an expert on Berserk or matters pertaining to Berserk. I'm just a guy reading through it for the first time, making my own inferences and everything like that. But that's cool. And so then we get Nuts is off on his journey. We get a little 2-year time skip. And so this is also, I'd have to go back and look at the specifics, but this is also where the beginning of Berserk takes place in this 2-year time skip, because we come back, we get my new favorite character. But we come back, and there's like a group of bandits settled under a tree. We see they have a girl with them who we later learned is named Jill. They're just kind of talking a little bit like, ooh, these trees are haunted, right? That kind of thing. And then one guy takes Jill, and he's about to go, I don't know, like maybe cook for her or something. Maybe be like, oh hey, like we're gonna maybe have play some hopscotch or something. I don't know. I don't know what he was planning on doing a little bit. Maybe he was planning on staking her entrails to the tree and then making her walk around once or something. Maybe, I don't know. That sounds a little gruesome. I don't think he would have done that. He seemed a nice guy. But he goes around there and a little ball drops on him, and he's like, oh, what's that? Who's there? And he looks and he sees none other than Nuts chilling under the tree, and he's like, you guys are so loud, right? And that's pretty base in and of itself. I love the guy. He's like, well, maybe we'll use your entrails, and like licks the knife, and then Nuts just like pushes it into his tongue. I was like, that's based. Nuts is crazy, bro. Nuts is absolutely crazy. He goes to the guy, and he's like, is that story you said true about all the souls and whatnot, and the tree being haunted? And he's like, hey, look, bud, you just roughed up our friend a little bit. That's not very cool. And then Nuts punches him with his hand, and he's like, sorry, I've only got one, because they were like, yeah, well, if you drop your stuff, we'll only take one of your arms. And he's like, oh, sorry, I can't do that. I only got one arm to give, And so got his cool little the 80s 90s action hero, little swagger there. Bro's chilling. He's got his one-liners, and then the tree turns into a little bit of a demon, a little bit, because it is kind of haunted, and the faces on it are kind of faces. And so then they start killing the bandits and eating the bandits, and then about to kill Jill too. Then Nuts comes in with his sword, and he's like, all right, we're cooking. And then she says the thing. She says the funny thing. She's like, it was much too big to be called a sword. And I'm like, no freaking way. Oh no, I was like, no freaking way, dude. It's the thing. She's saying the thing. It's like the same feelings whenever Nuts says it's Berserkin time. It's the catchphrase. It's just the catchphrase. I was like, okay, that's cool. And it's like, okay, so this is kind of our quote-unquote reintroduction to Nuts here. Similar to how we got our introduction to him at the beginning of Berserk. This is kind of like, okay, we're back with it, right? We're back with it. This is post that. Nuts has a little fight with the tree, blows it up, cuts it, cool, all the souls escape. There's one little one left that kind of goes for Jill a little bit, but a little thing drops on it, and it gets exercised. And this is where we get reintroduced to Puck, who's probably my favorite character. Dude, I was reading through this, right? And reading through Berserk, you know that Miura has a sense of humor. But, like, with Puck, it's just like, okay, there's finally a character where Miura can fully be like, we're joshing around with this one. We're joshing around with this one. Just the way that he's drawn and all his actions and everything, it's just, oh my gosh, it's hilarious. And his dynamic with Nuts is absolutely phenomenal. Just the happy-go-lucky little funny guy, and then the serious broody, I'm edgy kind of guy. You know, that kind of thing. I love it. I absolutely love that whole dynamic there. But Jill kind of screams a little bit. She's like, it's a fairy from wherever. And Buck is like, huh? No, I'm not, idiot. But then she goes back to town with Nuts. She gets back to town, and then we get to see her mother come out. She's like, oh, Jill, where were you? That kind of thing. Father comes out, and her father's a drunk, right? And he's not very nice. He's not exactly what you might call a model father. I will say that perchance I might still prefer this situation to the Princess of Midland. Perchance maybe he is a better father than that. But that is a very interesting bar set to say. I think there's some implications with not exactly the father, but the father's friends with Jill, that you kind of like okay, what all's exactly going on there? I don't know if we'll ever learn, but there's some implications there I was kind of picking up on as to their relationship. But it's just interesting to see, her home life sucks, and then, Nuts is there, and people see the little fairy guy, little Puck, and they're like, oh, it's a fairy from whoever, and they like instantly turn on Nuts, and they're like gonna go attack him. He's like, well, maybe if I kill one or two, they'll shut up. And Puck is like, oh wait, Guts, don't. But then he just cuts a barrel, and then he runs off, right? And it's kind of sad because beforehand we get a little grandma walks up to him, and he trips her because he's like, he doesn't want to be attacked, but he's not going to attack her. And she's like, give me back my grandson. It's like, oh, that's sad. That's very sad. Then they do turn on him, force Nuts into hiding, and then Nuts is talking to Puck, just fun. All their interactions were really fun. And then we get to Jill being like, oh, you can go wait in that windmill. I'll come by at night with food. We can talk then. Don't leave. And he's like, okay. He's like, but don't come back until daybreak. Said you don't want to repeat it last night, right? So this is an every night thing. Nuts has to fight off demons or ghosts or whatever, right? Because of his brand, right? And we also learn he hasn't slept in like 4 days, right? It happens. So basically, Jill goes back home, and not too good there. She sees her mother being abused, and her father just being a general drunkard and kind of an awful person. And this is where also we get the implications with her friends, because one of the friends was like, I'm gonna go piss, but then I think he went to Jill's room and she had to lock it and that kind of thing. So she doesn't have the best home life, right? The next day she gets up. We see her dress up a little bit nicer. I think that's an intentional choice, right? And she goes down to the windmill, and she sees it's a little bit destroyed, and Nuts is sleeping. She's about to disturb, but Puck is like, oh, he just fell asleep, let him be for a little bit. It's like, okay, so it's nice, Nuts didn't just surrender Puck to the townspeople, right? So he obviously cares about Puck at least a tiny bit, and this shows that Puck cares about Nuts a bit too. Or he's like, don't bother him. He's like, just let him sleep. He had a long night, and so it's like it's nice to see the subtle ways that they don't hate each other. Their dynamic is so much fun. I'm really looking forward to seeing how their relationship develops. But between the two of them, it's going to be a ton of fun. And then later, Nuts wakes up and he sees Jill is asleep on his lap. So I think that might also, because we didn't see her sleep at home, so it might also imply that she stayed up all night, right? She was afraid, maybe. That could also be why she was wandering in the woods. Maybe she was trying to run away, right? So I think there's more to her than meets the eye. I hope that she doesn't die a horrific death or anything, but also it's Berserk, so I don't know, right? You can hope all you want with that kind of stuff, right? But I think that she's an interesting character. I am looking forward to reading more with her in next volume. But yeah, so we get her, and she's telling Nuts she tells him about the fairies, right? The fairies from this forest. And we get the great panel of Nuts where he's like fits the bill, and it's like Puck is the annoying bug or harmful bug little panel. Oh, it's good. It's really funny. And she's basically describing the fairies, and they come and they raid crops, kind of, they kill livestock, but they also kill people, and they steal children. And that's like, oh, well, I can see why these people might not like the fairies. And these fairies, we also got to see a glimpse of them, because after the tree fight, the bandits that survived ran into the woods, and they actually met up with the fairies. We don't know what happened. They died, right? They died, but we didn't get to see that. We didn't get to see strictly what happened to them, right? But she's kind of telling Nuts about this. She's like, but I don't know. She's like, it just kind of seems off to me a little bit. And Nuts is like, yeah, I don't know. I don't like this little guy, so I don't know. But then Nuts' little Mark starts bleeding, and he's like, oh, something's here. He walks outside, and they see all the fairies coming, and she's like, that's them. That's the fairies. They're going towards the town. And then Nuts is like, oh, they ain't fairies. They're something a little bit more. Then we get another very iconic Berserk panel. Not as iconic as the first one, right? I mean, that's one of the most iconic panels just in manga, plainly. But this is also a very good Berserk panel of Nuts smiling. He's like, oh, those little critters ain't fairies. They're something else. Those little critters are something else. And then so we get to see them kind of go through, demolish livestock, kill people, a little traumatized little boy, right? Then Nuts comes to the rescue, kill some of the fairies, and he's like, "Hey, boy, you want revenge of your parents, or you want to die, right? Like them." And the boy's like, "I want revenge, right? I want to get back." And he's like, "Okay, cool, good. Listen to me." Then Nuts, based as he is, right, hoists the kid up on, I think his name is Thomas, hoists the kid up on his sword. And the townspeople been watching, they saw him run out of his own house, right? And they were like, oh, it's Thomas. Like, is his family dead? That kind of thing. And that was before Nuts was able to save him last minute. So they're watching this and it's like, what is he doing? And there's also Jill and Puck run up. Jill runs up against Puck's wishes. And they get there and they see this and they're like, what is he cooking? What is he cooking? So we see that Nuts is using the boy Thomas as bait to get the quote-unquote fairies to follow him. And he goes to a barn, right? And then in the barn, he goes, slashes some of them, lights it all on fire, him and Thomas get out. And watching it burn, and he looks over at Thomas, he's like, hey, bugs burn pretty good, don't they? It's like, okay, so it's helping Thomas get some closure for the death of his parents that he just saw eaten in front of him. The dude's going to have some issues growing up, probably, but at least he got to watch children burn alive. Man, I will also say I read the first couple pages of volume 15 because I was like, oh my gosh, it's too good. I was just gonna read like the first page and then I just kind of kept going to it. It's like literally just a couple pages, but I was like, oh my gosh, okay. But yeah, so he sees that, but then, the big boss fairy shows up. And so it's like, well, that's not great, right? That is less than ideal, right? And then the volume ends, and I was like, oh my gosh, this was such a good volume. You could tell you really love a series whenever like a volume ends, and like you have to. I tell you that is the only downside to having to record reviews on it, because like I have to sit down and talk about it before I read the next volume. I could talk about 2 volumes at once, but that's not as cool. I gotta get as many videos. I gotta get as much content out of this as I can. But no, I want to sit down and talk about each volume individually, right? I think that's a good system for a series like Berserk. But it does kill me to have to stop and record this. But it's also good because it lets me condense my thoughts and really kind of dive more into the material than just speed read it. So it's also good like that. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but I think it is for the better ultimately. But yeah, it's very good volume. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There's just a lot to like. This is basically setting up the rest of Berserk, basically, where we get to see Nuts kind of fully transform into the Black Swordsman, right? Where we saw everything with the eclipse happen, but now, okay, he's got his armor, he's got his sword, he's got his hand, he's got his mission, he's got his journey, he's got the drip. His character design goes so hard. He's got Puck. I love Puck. I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of a role Puck plays in the future. Hopefully he doesn't die. I like Jill so far. Maybe she'll stick around. Maybe she won't. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see. And I can't wait. I can't wait for volume 15. Obviously, I couldn't wait. I read the first couple pages, but I'll talk about my thoughts on the first couple pages in the volume 15 review. So, before I formally end this off, I also wanted to say I'm reading with the deluxe editions. I think I mentioned that in every video because I think that it's cool and I want to brag how much money I have. Naturally, I'm a very, very conceited person at heart. But I don't know if it's in the volume releases or not. But people over at Dark Horse translated the original Berserk prototype, right? And they put it in here, and it's between volumes 14 and 15, which I might have put it at the end of the volume, but they put it between volume 14 and 15. So maybe it's in the volume release of 14 as well. I don't know. But I got to read that, and that was a lot of fun. I'm not going to go uber in depth on it. It's just a little kind of one-shot thing. Some of the lore is different, where it's like, okay, Nuts saw his mom get eaten by demons. The God Hand doesn't exist. It's some other little critter. Nuts is basically the same. He's a little cockier. He has a very pronounced frown. There's the little Griffith girl. Nuts is cockier, kind of, I think. Puck is still Puck. Maybe a little bit more emotional. I'm not going to claim to know Puck uber well. But just all around, it's prototype Berserk, right? He doesn't have the crossbow on his arm. Instead, he has just a crossbow itself. But he originally had an eye patch that he gave to the Griffith girl. It was a fun little story, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, dude, a college student wrote this? I'm in college. I couldn't write something like I just talking to a mic for 30 minutes about Berserk. It's extremely impressive what Miura could do at that age, and his art. I did not talk about the art enough this volume. Just because it kind of goes without saying for Berserk. I might say Berserk is just the best art in any manga I've read. And, it's kind of hard to say that because I've read a lot of manga. But the consistency of just the amazingness of Berserk's art is absolutely phenomenal. It's amazing you can have that kind of art with still phenomenal story. It's kind of a rare combo. You only find in a couple series of just phenomenal, just almost museum worthy level art. It's amazing, combined with a great story, and it's really good. And I enjoyed the art of the prototype as well. Just very, very good stuff. With the prototype, Nuts was kind of more of the he was kind of edgier than he is in Berserk, and that's saying something because he's pretty edgy in Berserk. But he was a bit edgier. I'm not complaining. I love Edge. I am a big Edge guy, right? You know me. But I was like, so then his frown was funny. It's a very, very pronounced frown. But I really enjoyed it. But yeah, no, Volume 14 was absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to stop recording, and then I'm going to read Volume 15 tonight, and maybe I'll even record the Volume 15 review tonight. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see where that goes. So, if you're this far in the video, obviously there's time you like. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment telling me what your favorite part of this volume was. There's a lot to choose from. So thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you all in the next one.